Happy Monday, everybody. Phil Brown here with JitCAD Cam. After a long weekend and way too much turkey, we're going to go ahead and kick this Milling Monday off where we're going to do this simple bracket, and we're going to do a couple of things with a fourth axis and possibly patterning our part and running it out of a bar to increase production. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So as you can see, as always, got the part file open. We're going to go ahead and jump over to the manufacturer workspace. And what I like to do is I like to start programming my first part to get an idea of what and how I can do this part. So let's go ahead and create our setup. And with that setup, we're going to go ahead and set our machine to milling. From here, we're going to say I want to choose my Z and my X. I'm actually going to go Z up this way. You guys may be familiar with this. We're going to go ahead and fixed size box this. Let's say this was actually coming out of 375. I'm going to go to 2.25. Hopefully they sell aluminum billets in this size, and 1.75, right? Offset from top as always, giving us enough room at the bottom to, of course, hold on. That is getting a little close for comfort, so maybe we actually go with a 2-inch tall piece of stock. Again, we're going to flip these parts over at some point and face off the hat. The idea is we want to get this down to as few as setups as possible. So the very first thing we always want to do is we want to rough out our part. So I'm going to shoot into the adaptive clearing. We're going to go ahead and go over to our Fusion library, and I'm just going to go for a good old-fashioned 1/2-inch flat end mill and aluminum roughing. So as you can see, before I go ahead and hit OK, we're doing a 125 thou step over. We're doing a 3/4 step down, and then we have our fine step downs for anywhere 3D. So let's go ahead and hit OK and see what we get. So as you can see, we are actually getting the entire outside of this part roughed out. And to show you this, we're going to go ahead and turn on my stock. But just like that, we've actually accomplished a lot off of one toolpath. So let's go ahead and make a couple of adjustments. Of course, we want to go deeper than our physical model. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here. We're going to go to our heights tab. I'm actually going to take that down to probably about 50 thou past the bottom. I'm actually going to bump my step up. Now, this is up to you guys and your tooling. I've used a lot of tooling, including those Acro Pros from MSC. So I'm going to go a little closer to a 2 times depth of cut step down. And then I'm going to do a 200 or a 40% step over. So let's go ahead and hit OK here, getting this cleaned up. And now we're going to be a little more aggressive with everything that we're doing and roughing out that part. So as you can see, we are getting some funkiness with our model, and this happens because our flute and our tool isn't long enough. So let's go ahead and edit that. So we're going to edit our tool. We're going to come in here and we're going to go to our cutter. And then from here, we're actually going to say, you know, my stick out needs to be more. So we're going to say 1.75 stick out. Now, my flute length and my shoulder length, this is where I'm going to bump this up to 2-inch. And again, we're actually going to go back and change something here. So we're going to say 2-inch. And now, again, our part is only 1.5 deep. So we know very much that we have plenty of flute length here, as you're going to see. Now, my tool in itself, though, is sticking out much further than needed. So actually, I made a mistake there. We're going to go back. And I don't want 1 inch because that's 4 times deep. We're actually going to go 2 times deep with this 1 inch. And my brain was not quite working as much this morning yet. But as you can see, we've now remedied the situation and we're no longer getting that funkiness with the stock. So before we switch tools, unless you were going to use a different finishing tool, I tend to stay with the same tool for a lot of what I have going on. So let's go in and do our flats. So we're going to go ahead and go to our horizontal tool path. As always, I like to just hit OK and see what I get. Now, automatically, we're finding all the flat areas and cleaning up those flat areas. So that worked out quite well for me. Again, let's go ahead and do our bore now. So what I need to do is I need to bore this hole. And I need to bore this all the way down to the bottom, but I don't want to do it as 2 split segments. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go to Heights tab, and we're actually just going to say Model Bottom. And just like we kind of did before, we're going to go ahead and bust that through by about 50. And then one thing to be clear of is we do have hole top. And now this will be a little tricky to see. But as you can see, my helix is actually starting down here at the bottom of that chamfer. So I need to adjust that so that we're not actually causing a collision on that surface. So again, this is where I could either say model top, or I'm going to go through and actually say a selected face. So if I say selected face and I pick this upper face, notice that helix has come up now, and we're much higher up on that actual profile. So again, that allowed us to bore out the inside bore there. My holes here are much smaller than that end mill, so we're going to go ahead and drill those. However, I am actually still in need of going around this outside profile and cleaning everything up. Now, for those of you that know me, some days I would use 3D contour. In the case of this part, I'm actually just using 2D contour because this is a very simple profile to go around and be able to clean up with one nice little clean pass. Again, we do want to go down further than our part, and we're actually seeing a little bit of a step here because our roughing went deeper. However, our finishing isn't. Now, I'm going to go 20 past, and this just guarantees we have a little bit of a safety precaution, as you can see here, between hitting that floor and causing chatter or tool deflection as we go. So, as you can see, we've actually hammered out quite a bit of this with just a 1/2 inch end mill. Let's go in and do our spot or our drilling real quick. So we're going to go ahead and grab our drill. I'm going to swap this out for a 1/2 inch drill. Kind of funny how a 1/2 inch end mill would have drilled that, but get down through here. Go ahead and grab our 1/2 inch. Again, based on your machine, your speeds and feeds, guys, let's go ahead and grab the 2 holes that we want. Now, this is where we do have what's called auto merge. So as you can see by turning on auto merge, I'm starting at the top of where that chamfer is. Same thing with my drill tip through bottom. And as always, I'm going to run about 20 through breakthrough. This is looking to be about 2 or 3 times diameter depth of cut. So no reason to do any pecking or anything crazy with this tool. If you wanted to, you could do so over here in the cycles tab. So now that we've knocked that out, now if I was doing this in a 3-axis machine, I might start to look at actually 3D'ing the surface to save an operation. But considering I need to actually cut out this mouth here and do that kind of profile there, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to now switch things up, and I'm going to go for a kind of 4th axis tilted move. So again, I'm going to go into 2D contour here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my tool back. So we're going to go back to that 1/2 inch flat end mill. And with that 1/2 inch flat end mill, the key element here is we need to do a tool orientation. I'm actually going to pick the edge here. The reason why I'm picking the edge is to make sure that that edge is parallel to these surfaces. Again, I could have used this because it is a very square part with a couple of fillets. But in my case, I'm lucking out quite well. So the good thing is I do need to remember that my x-axis does always need to point to wherever my actual 4th axis is going to be mounted. I'm actually going to use this back face and flip this. Again, we're going to move things around here in a little bit, but it's a little easier to reference a face for the same thing every time to make sure your X is always pointed the right way. So now my contour here. So this is where I'm holding the Alt key, and I'm picking my first edge. Then I'm picking that same edge a second time to open up my edit menu. And well, I'm just going to take this guy out and around my part. And as you can see, I now have that chain to run down the edge of this part. Again, I need all of those edges to fall into one chain so that there's no breaks or issues with the system. So again, if we go ahead and hit OK, you're going to notice we're coming in on the side now, and we're just running across that face nice and easily. So let's repeat this a little bit more. So now again, I need to rough out this mouth. Again, I'm going to go to 2D adaptive clearing. We're going to go ahead and do our tool orientation. Again, pick a line and a face. Again, you don't have to do it this way, guys. You can do it whatever way that you feel necessary. I just feel much more comfortable with using that edge, knowing that it is vertical on those walls. Now we're going to pick our pocket. Again, I'm going to use my Alt key. I'm going to pick the first edge, and then I'm going to chase that around. And as you're going to see, it is projecting that actual profile down below. And now that is going to be considered an open chain with 7 edges. And as you're seeing, we're on the wrong side, so we can again go into that chain and edit. So we're going to go ahead and say reverse. And then we hit OK. And now you can see my profile is inside that kind of mouth profile versus outside that mouth profile. So again, you could adjust a lot of things here. We could set our optimal load. We could do multiple depths. Again, if I was really concerned about my heights, we could say, you know, I need to go from this height down to, you know, this height. I do need to break through. But as you're going to see is we're going to go in there and we're just going to rough out that mouth. Now, I did do this out of order on purpose because when I do this outside profile, I probably want to finish this inside profile. So let's drag that roughing up. Let's go back to that contour toolpath. We're going to add a second chain in here. So let's go ahead and use our Alt key, grab that first edge. Again, we're going to go ahead and open this all up. And as you're seeing, my red arrow is on the outside of my part. If I click that actual red arrow, it jumps inside. It also checks this reverse box for me. So now let's go ahead and do both those profiles kind of all in one shot. So as you can see here, we are coming in. We're now roughing that out. We are finishing the outside profile. But one really neat thing that has happened here is we can avoid now doing these flat areas with that horizontal toolpath. So all because we had a fourth axis and we're going to tilt this part 90 degrees, we're actually able to eliminate this horizontal toolpath and cut some machine time out. Now, me personally, I would stick with this 1/2 inch as much as possible throughout my process. So I'm actually going to snag that drill procedure, and I'm going to move that all the way down to the bottom here. And now the idea is that we're going to rough, we're going to do that bore, outside profile, we're going to flip down, we're going to open that mouth up with that C-notch, and then we're going to come through and we're going to clean up that other face across the backside. Again, we're holding on to the bottom of this in some way, shape, or form, probably Mighty Bites on a jig or a tombstone, but just like that, we've kind of knocked out this entire profile of this part, with the exception of a couple of chamfers if we wanted to do those. Now, I would also go in and I would probably deburr this, and this is where I'm going to sales pitch you guys that I would go in and I would use the 3D deburr toolpath. It's an amazing toolpath. You could do a lot with this to go in and clean up those edges. Again, if you guys are looking for the machining extension, you could always do a free trial. You could also purchase the machining extension through me personally at my website, jitcadcam.com. There is a promo currently going on, I think until the 6th of December, if you're looking to purchase sooner than later. So let's get back to it. So now we've done one part as a whole. Now let's say I wanted to do multiple parts. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go back to design. I'm going to take my original part and I'm going to create a pattern. So let's grab this first part. I do need to give it a direction. So we are going to pattern this based on an axis. Again, I'm going to pick one of these edges on my part and I'm going to drag that out. So as you can see, I can now start to put multiple of these in one shot. So what does that mean overall when we start to machine these profiles? Well, if we go back to manufacture and I edit everything, so what I'm going to do is first and foremost, we're going to add those bodies in. So in this case, I actually clicked a face to change my Z. So I'm going to hit cancel. Let's go down to body and we're going to pick all those bodies. Now I do need to change the length of my stock in X. So let's go ahead and set that now to maybe 12 inches. We're actually going to need a little more than that. We're going to go about not 176. That would be overkill. And we're landing on about 13 inches of material. So again, if you're a little self-conscious of material and being able to get the maximum amount out of this part, this would be a good way to do it. Now, as we walk through this and start to regenerate our toolpath, what you're going to notice is it's now recognizing all three parts in one shot. However, some operations are still locked in that mindset of only doing the first part. So as you're seeing here is we are going to have to fix something here shortly, and that's going to be that open pocket area. As you can see, we're now coming all the way in from this end, which we wouldn't want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this profile. And if we go ahead and look at our actual toolpath in itself, we do have what's called rest machining. However, we're going to have a little bit of a problem here. The same as if I try to turn on my stock, what's happening is it thinks that is an open pocket and it needs to start from the end. So very rarely do you need to go into Fusion and make some changes. So the first change I'm actually going to attempt here is I do have the machining extension, and I'm not trying to sell you guys on this, but I would try to trim this toolpath. And as you can see, we cannot trim a 2D toolpath. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back to design, and I'm going to create a sketch based on the same direction as that pocket. Now, the idea of this actual pocket is going to be just to put this rectangle to signify where the stock might be for machining this. Now, again, I'm going to go ahead and kick back on those sketches so you guys can see this. I'm going to shrink this up as well. And if you notice here, I did design this part in Fusion, so that's why you're seeing that. But what I'm controlling with this is how open that mouth is based on the profile. So let's go ahead and start with this, and we'll come back and adjust this a little bit more. So let's go back to manufacture, go to our adaptive clearing. We're going to add a stock contour, and we're going to pick that box. Now notice how it shrank that completely up for me to actually start much closer to that profile. Now, if I really was in a pinch and I wanted to get this even closer and closer than where it is, I do have that freedom to go through the process of going back to back to design. We're going to go ahead and edit that sketch. I'm going to go ahead and hit P for project. I'm going to project an edge possibly. And now I have this point of reference. Again, we could use some constraints like horizontal, vertical. We actually went vertical there, so I'm going to Control Z that a couple times and drag this in. But now if we go horizontal, vertical, you can see how I brought that edge all the way in. So what that is now going to allow me to do is when we go back to manufacture all over again and I regenerate, I'm starting much closer to my profile. Again, cutting down on a little bit of cycle time for this part. Now, let's get that sketch out of the way so we don't have any selection issues. But as you can see, we're still only doing the first part for these couple of toolpaths. Well, I could manually select everything here, or I could actually use a pattern function. Now, there's a lot of different pattern functions, and this is where I made a giant mistake that, in my case, I did not duplicate these as components. I duplicated these as bodies, and this is very important because had I done component pattern, if I picked the first one, it would have found the other two. Now, these are just bodies in a component, so this isn't going to work for me. So the next one is we could do a linear pattern. Well, the problem is I don't remember my spacing from patterning them in the design workspace. I could go back. I could figure that out. I could measure. There's a million ways to do this. Now, again, there's another pattern that I really like, and duplicate pattern is probably one of my favorite, is if I just pick a point on the first one, and I pick that same point on the preceding setups or the preceding parts, you're going to notice that it gives me an exact duplication in that location. Now, it doesn't rotate in any way, shape, or form. So this only works in like a linear kind of pattern. Now, component pattern would rotate your parts for you and find them that way. But you can see how actually using the duplication pattern, I could go from one part for maybe, just doing a first article on this to actually patterning out all my toolpaths, giving me the complete system here to machine all three of these. Now, keep in mind, guys, again, we do need to verify a few more things here real quick. And one of those things is I did forget to say, is there is a preserve order by operation or order by tool. Now, this is very important depending on what you're doing. Preserve order is going to finish out one whole part in this pattern before going to the next. That means it's going to switch tool change to my drill and everything. The next one that is important is order by operation. Now, why this one is important is because if I was doing some roughing things, and that's one of the first things I'm attempting, I may want to rough all of my parts out before going in and actually finishing the sides. Again, tool wear, deflection, there's a lot of reasons for this. Lastly, order by tool means we're just going to stick with the same tool, do all operations on each one of these bodies before moving to the next one. So let's go back. I'm going to do actually order by operations, and we're going to change our order again just to have a little fun with this. So as you can see, we're doing our bore. And then at the end, we do have to come back and tilt our table back to do our two holes in the top. However, we're going to go ahead and do that bore. Then we're going to go out and do our outside profile and then come through, machine out this pocket, and then lastly, do our finished profile. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take these two and I'm dragging them up to the top. And the reason for that is if you think I'm going to rough here, then I'm going to rough here, and then I'm going to go through from those two roughing profiles, start my finish work with being able to incorporate that tilt back to the top to clean everything up. Again, the idea here is Fusion is actually going to go through and rough all of my parts because we did say keep the operation order correct. And then it's going to go to the finishing and it's going to finish all three of these. Then it will tilt, bore all these, so forth and so on. So I did make a mistake there. And the cool thing is Fusion is showing me this is we're not actually machining past the bottom of our part. Again, I'm going to go in and we're going to go ahead and say we want to go at least 20 past just to make sure we're breaking that edge. And again, because we didn't finish the vertical walls yet, that's why we were seeing that. So as you can see, it is very easy to program up this type of stuff to go in and do one part as many and be able to actually speed up your cycle time, minimize your tool changes, and be much more hands-off on your machine using Fusion 360. So as we get to the end of this, as always, guys, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And you guys know me, Phil Brown at JitCAD-CAM, and I have to do this to you. If you guys want custom one-on-one training or to purchase your software through me and help support this channel and keep my dream alive of continuing to do this under my own brand, please do so by using my website or reaching out to me via email. And as always, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.